Hello apprentices, and welcome to the Dungeon Master's Apprentice. And I'm your friendly neighborhood Dungeon Master, and I'm here to tell you that there are 6 questions that every Dungeon Master should ask himself when he is creating a new campaign world. And the first question is, what kind of rules or rule set do you want to play by when you are creating your world? Do you want to play in the most modern rule set, which is currently 5e in Dungeons & Dragons? Or do you want to try something more old school? Do you follow the OSR movement and want to play OD&D, D&D 0, or do you want to play AD&D? Maybe you want to play through the rules encyclopedia. Well, none of these are bad answers, but you have to decide how you want the feel and the flavor of your game to go. But why be limited to just a single rule set? Why not mix and match to your heart's content to get the exact flavor you're looking for? Base it in 2nd edition and pull in some 3e and 5e. Base it on the rules encyclopedia, but pull in a little AD&D as well. It's up to you. The sky's the limit. Personally, I love the 3.5 D20 system, but I also love the OSR movement and the feel that everything is possible and danger is around every corner. I love fear, uncertainty, and doubt that the old systems gave the players. So, with that in mind, I'm going to use a combination of 3.5, D20, and the older systems. I'll mix and match. I'll cherry pick what I want, but that's what my decision was. Question number 2 is what level of fantasy do you want? Do you want high fantasy where everybody's riding griffins and wielding these amazing legendary weapons, storming other planes of existence? Or do you want even mid-level to maybe high-level characters being worried that they might be stabbed in an alley somewhere, or lose a game of poker and get into a bar fight and possibly die? I like low level. I'm not sure I like that level of low level, but I like low level of fantasy. But I also like the possibilities of high fantasy. So my world is going to be low fantasy, but with having an ancient fallen civilization of high fantasy underneath. So this world was built on the bones of an ancient high fantasy civilization, similar to Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. Question number 3. What races and monsters are you going to include in the game? Are you going to have every possible race in Pathfinder? Or are you going to have every single monster in the Monsters manuals? Or are you going to be a little more restrictive? Are you going to say only dwarves, elves, halflings, and humans? Or maybe only the goblinoid races or monsters? I don't know. It's up to you. But by being restrictive, you can become more creative. And in that way, I want to be humanocentric in my world. I want to start with all the player characters being human. But that doesn't mean it'll stay that way, because as they adventure, as they explore, as they get over that next mountain, they might find another race. They might find another monster. Maybe there are ways that monsters from the high fantasy world that preceded them were kept in stasis, and their adventuring, their dungeon delving, released a monster. Or maybe some other adventuring party that was destroyed released a monster in an area. And it's now overtaking that area with its children or something, which would allow you to have unique monsters without having to have them ubiquitous in the world. And for that, I'm going to also be sort of basing my answers on Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time, in that humans start humanocentric, and for the monsters, let's start with humans as the bad guys, to start with bandits, etc. And as they explore, we'll see. Question number 4 is a question of flavor. What kind of flavor do you have? What kind of flavor do you want your campaign to have? Do you want it to be a generic fantasy campaign world where the players understand the tropes, they know that it is a standard fantasy medieval European world? Or do you want to change the flavor? Maybe go an Oriental campaign, or a even more esoteric and more flavorful campaign? Because if you want to take one end, Greyhawk, the Forgotten Realms, very generic, filled with the standard tropes, but eminently and easily understandable by the players. On the other end, you have things like Dark Sun, Spelljammer, or even Eberron, where things are different. They're not the same. So you have to explain to the players their own world, which feels a little different. I mean, you don't want to spend hours talking to them about your world. Let it come up through the gameplay, but it allows you so much more freedom by actually being a little restrictive. Now, I personally am going to, once again, pull from the Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time series, and I'm going to base some of this stuff from that excellent D20 role-playing source, the World of Time role-playing game from Wizards of the Coast. It's an excellent book. I suggest everybody read it. It gives you another look at how D&D 3.5 can be done. Number 5 is magic. Magic. Makes you wonder, how can your world run magic? Well, it's in the player's handbook. It has all the spells. Dungeon Master Guide has all the magic items. It's obvious how to run magic in D&D, right? No matter what version you're running, magic is already defined, isn't it? Yes and no. Because if you change magic, then you change the flavor of the world. You can make it more restrictive, you can make it more abundant, depending on if you want high or low fantasy. You can also make it so that the spells that are listed in the player's handbook might be just the average case for that spell. Maybe the master of the character has a better version or a worse version, slightly worse, slightly better. So they're named the same, but they're not really exactly the same spell. And if the spell is slightly worse, maybe through adventuring, the character can learn the better version of the spell. Or maybe find an elite version of the spell that acts even better. So those little tweaks allow you to create a more expansive, more enjoyable game, in my opinion. Or you can go crazy, and like me, I'm going to be using the magic system out of the Wheel of Time role-playing game. This allows me a lot of freedom, and I believe it will allow me to create an amazing game. Remember, this is the same magic that destroyed the high fantasy civilization an eon ago. So expect some backlash. I expect some fear and some doubt from this magic, from the common populace. Which brings me to question number 6. Religion. Are you going to have a custom pantheon? Are you going to use the North's pantheon? Are you going to have multiple pantheons? Maybe even every race having its own pantheon? And if so, did they all get together to create this world? Did only one of them create this world and the rest of them just glommed on? Or possibly the world was created already and your gods just wandered by and said, oh, we'll just take it. And maybe later, the elder gods that did create the world come back to exert their ownership. You never know. Could be fun. But for me, I'm going to try something even crazier. I'm going to go monotheism. I'm going to have one God and one adversary. And the God and the adversary, let's make it even crazier. No powers from them are granted to either characters or NPCs. So no godly powers. That means clerics have no spells. Matter of fact, let's get rid of the character class completely. Priests from the monotheistic religion, they have temporal power, like our own Middle Ages, but no magical power. And since they have no magical power, and they're the predominant religion, I can see where they would persecute and actively try to denounce magic users as heretics because of, hey, look what they did to the old world. It's their fault. So then we have this dynamic between people who adhere to the old beliefs and the new religion that is expanding out. Usually in our own world, the religion took over the population centers and then eventually expanded out to the smaller towns and the farming communities. So maybe one of my first sessions, they'll be in a small village, and the village, though, has a newly erected church to the monotheistic God. They mostly adhere to the old beliefs, but attend the church as well, just to appease the leaders. I don't know, but it sounds fun. And it sounds filled with conflict. And conflict is what drives role-playing games. And if a priest casts spells, he probably has to hide it. So think Duncan from the Darini novels by Catherine Kurtz. Wow, that ages me. So if you even know that reference, leave in a comment below, okay? So that's my take on the 6 questions you need to ask when you first start creating your own campaign world. So if you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more of content like this, and follow me as I'm creating and fleshing out this world, and also having an occasional video on how I run games in specific situations like mapping or chase scenes, then please subscribe and hit that bell icon where you'll be notified every time I upload new content. And please don't forget to like and comment. I really want to hear from you. So, thank you. And until next time, adventure on.